Nuclear fission, the process that powers nuclear energy, the discovery that led to the atomic bomb, and the scientific breakthrough that split not just atoms, but history itself. It's often credited to one man, Otto Hahn. And if you watched Oppenheimer, you might think the atomic age was unlocked by a group of American men alone. But actually, this discovery that launched the nuclear era was solved by an Austrian Jewish woman in exile, having fled the Nazis. Her name was Lise Meitner. Even though she calculated the science behind the most consequential chemical reaction in modern history, she was left out of the Nobel Prize and left out of the movie. This is the story of the woman who actually split the atom. Lise Meitner was born in 1878 in Vienna, Austria. At the time, girls weren't allowed to attend high school, let alone university. But Lise was brilliant and lucky. Her parents hired private tutors so she could keep learning. In 1901, Austria finally allowed women to enroll in universities. Lise enrolled immediately, becoming one of the first women ever to study physics at the University of Vienna. By 1905, she earned her PhD. She was only the second woman in the university's history to do so in physics. In 1907, she moved to Berlin to study under Max Planck, the father of quantum theory. He was one of the most influential physicists in the world, and he didn't usually allow women in his lectures. But Lise impressed him. Even still, she had to work for free in a basement because women weren't allowed in official research spaces. Basement physics, because nothing says progress like putting your best scientist in the cellar. She met Otto Hahn at the university, and together they became one of the most important scientific duos in Europe. Otto was a chemist, while Lise was a physicist, both theoretical and experimental. They were a perfect team. Lise would theorize about what could be and run the calculations. Otto would run the experiments to test the theories. In 1917, she and Otto discovered a new element to add to the periodic table: protactinium. In 1922, Lise uncovered a process where unstable atoms could eject electrons to restabilize themselves. It was a major breakthrough in nuclear theory, but the credit went to a French scientist named Pierre-Victor Auger, who claims to have independently discovered the same effect more than a year after Lise published the finding. Today, it's still called the Auger effect. In 1924, Lise Meitner was nominated for her first Nobel Prize in physics. She was nominated 9 more times before the decade was over. In fact, over her lifetime, Lise received 49 Nobel nominations, 30 in physics, 19 in chemistry, though she never won. But as her scientific reputation soared, the world around her was growing darker. By the early 1930s, the Nazis were rising to power. By 1938, Germany annexed Austria, invalidating Lise's passport, making her stateless, and putting her directly in danger. She was Jewish, a prominent scientist, and now a target. With help from international colleagues, she fled, escaping Germany with just 10 German marks and a diamond ring in her pocket. Otto stayed behind in Berlin. Lise settled in Sweden, exiled from the lab she helped build. But she didn't stop working. She continued her research projects with Otto by writing secret letters. But before we get there, let's set the scientific scene. This was a golden age of atomic discovery. For over a century, atoms were believed to be the smallest particles in existence, the basic building blocks of matter. But in the early 1900s, that idea began to crack. Scientists started uncovering the atom's inner structure. First, the electron, then the nucleus, and later, the neutron and proton. Piece by piece, the atom was no longer indivisible. And it was the discovery of the neutron in 1932 that changed everything. Scientists realized they could fire neutrons at an atom to knock protons around and theoretically transform one element into another. So deep inside the atom, a new frontier of discovery was underway. Now, back to the story. By the late 1930s, Lise and Otto were at the forefront of this research, searching for new, undiscovered elements. Then, in December 1938, it happened. As part of one of their shared projects, he and his assistant, Fritz Strassmann, had bombarded uranium atoms with neutrons. But instead of transforming uranium into radium, what they expected, they observed a new, different element. Barium. They had no idea what to make of the results. For non-chemists, uranium atoms are huge. Barium is half the size. Otto's results shouldn't have been possible under known science at the time. Something didn't add up. Lise ruminated on the problem, walking through a snowy forest with her nephew, Otto Frisch. And then, her realization. The nucleus hadn't transformed. It had split. Using Niels Bohr's theory of nuclear structure, Lise realized that when the neutron struck the uranium, it caused the unstable nucleus to break. This wasn't just radioactive decay when an atom loses some protons, it was something new entirely. The splitting of the atom. And when it split, it released a staggering amount of energy. Over 1,000 times more powerful than any chemical reaction known to mankind. Her nephew, Otto, coined the name nuclear fission. This moment changed everything. It transformed how we understand matter, energy, and the forces of the universe. It was the moment the atomic age began. And it belonged to her. But, so much for decades of collaboration, Otto did not inform Lise he was going to publish the findings. Otto and Fritz Strassmann published the chemical evidence of fission in January 1939 without including Lise Meitner as a co-author, despite relying on her interpretation to understand the results. Lise Meitner and her nephew published the theoretical explanation of the process 1 month later. But the world was already on fire. Hitler was in power. The world was on the precipice of war, and the implications of fission weren't just theoretical. Her discovery had consequences. Fission meant it was possible to build a bomb, one with unimaginable force and from only a few pounds of uranium. Lise wanted no part in that. She refused to work on weapons. Her discovery reached physicists Leo Szilard and Albert Einstein, who warned the US government that because Otto was working under Nazi rule, they feared the German government would begin to try and build an atom bomb first. Their letter helped launch the Manhattan Project. Lise was asked to work on the project, but refused. The project that created the atom bomb, the magnitude of this weapon and the scale of its destruction changed the world forever. In 1944, the Nobel Prize was awarded for the discovery of nuclear fission. And it went to Otto Hahn. Alone. He never credited Lise. Not in the papers, not in interviews, not even in his memoir. However, according to reliable sources, Otto reportedly expressed private regret about Lise's exclusion from the Nobel. And while we will never know the full story, one has to imagine he may have felt pressure while living in the heart of Nazi Germany, working under the eye of the Nazi government, to expose that he had a Jewish collaborator. It wasn't until 1966, almost 30 years later, that the US government tried to correct the record. They gave Lise the Enrico Fermi Award, one of the top honors in nuclear science. But by then, she was nearing the end of her life. She died in 1968. The Nobel never came. Today, nuclear fission powers more than just bombs. It fuels nuclear power plants, providing roughly 10% of the world's electricity and over half of America's carbon-free energy. It's used in cancer treatments like radiation therapy and in medical imaging like PET scans. It helps sterilize equipment, preserve food, and power spacecraft. This single discovery reshaped modern science, medicine, energy, and geopolitics. Lise Meitner saw what no one else saw. She held the key to the atomic age and never used it for destruction. So next time you hear the words nuclear fission or nuclear energy, remember her. Thank you, Lise Meitner. Your work gave us power, and your humanity reminded us to wield it wisely.